There are moments in an off-season when a rumor doesn't just whisper, it bangs on the door and refuses to be ignored. This is one of those moments. Because if the latest report is even remotely close to reality, then the Toronto Blue Jays are staring at what can only be described as an outright heist. Not a clever little upgrade, not a marginal tweak around the edges, but a move that could quietly redefine how this team looks, feels, and wins over the next several years. And the most fascinating part is that the name at the center of it all isn't new. It's familiar. It's been hovering around the Jays for a while now, like a thought you can't quite shake, and suddenly, that thought feels dangerously close to becoming real. Welcome back to the Blue Jays Report, where we slow the game down just enough to see what's really happening. Today's episode is packed, and I mean packed. A potentially game-changing trade, another signing as spring training creeps closer, a moment to honor Buck Martinez as he steps away from the booth, and a few subtle league-wide moves that ripple straight back to Toronto. This is one of those videos where everything connects, so do yourself a favor and stay with me to the very end. Before we dive in, let me say this properly. The support you've shown this channel, especially during the quieter stretches of the off-season, has been unbelievable. Truly. If you enjoy this kind of deep, honest breakdown, hit that like button, share the video with another Jays fan, and subscribe to the Blue Jays Report so you're here for every twist as we march towards spring training. Now let's get into the heart of it, because an article dropped that instantly made people sit up a little straighter. The headline talked about the Blue Jays being linked to a game-changing trade for a 28-year-old outfielder. Headlines love drama, we know that, but buried beneath the noise was something far more interesting. A report from Mitch Bannon, one of the most reliable voices covering this team, quietly confirmed what many suspected. The Blue Jays have checked in on Steven Kwan before, and not casually either. They checked in seriously, with intent, and they liked what they saw. Kwan is the type of player who doesn't scream superstar at first glance, but baseball has a funny way of rewarding players who do everything right. A left-handed contact bat, elite plate discipline, speed, intelligence, and defense that borders on artistry. The idea of him hitting between George Springer and Vladimir Guerrero Jr. isn't just aesthetically pleasing, it's strategically devastating. He puts the ball in play. He doesn't strike out. He moves runners. He forces pitchers to work. And in October, that kind of player becomes priceless. The reason this conversation stalled last year was simple. Cleveland wanted a massive return. Not a polite package, not a couple of maybes, but a haul that included multiple prospects and at least one major league-ready player who could step in immediately. That's a serious ask, and at the time, Toronto balked. But here's the key detail that changes everything. That interest didn't disappear. It lingered. It simmered. And now, with the Jays in a slightly different position, it feels far more realistic. The Blue Jays and Guardians have history, and not the awkward kind. These two front offices understand each other. They've danced before. They found deals that work for both sides. Toronto likes control. Cleveland likes value. Steven Kwan checks every box the Jays prioritize when they swing big. He's controllable. He's consistent. He fits the organizational philosophy almost perfectly. Let's talk about the player himself for a moment, because numbers never tell the full story, but they matter. Last season, Kwan posted a 3.7 WAR with a .705 OPS. No, he's not launching 40 home runs. That's not his job. His value lives elsewhere. He steals bases. He takes extra bags. He turns singles into pressure. He wins Gold Gloves like they're part of his contract. Back to back to back. One of the best defensive outfielders in the sport, full stop. Now imagine an outfield where his glove quietly erases mistakes made by others. Imagine pairing him with Dalton Varsho, another elite defender. Suddenly, the fact that George Springer or Anthony Santander might not be at their defensive peak matters far less. Defense becomes a strength, not a concern. The Blue Jays don't just improve. They balance. And this is where the idea of a heist starts to make sense. Because yes, Cleveland will demand a lot. They should. But Toronto finally has the kind of prospect depth that allows them to have this conversation without flinching. You're not trading your absolute crown jewels. You're not emptying the cupboard. You're dealing from strength. Names like Nathan Lukes or Joey Loperfido immediately come into focus as major league-ready pieces. Useful players. Valuable players. But not franchise cornerstones. Add to that a selection of prospects from a deep system, and suddenly the picture sharpens. Painful? A little. Worth it? Absolutely. Think about the outfield beyond this season. Springer isn't getting younger. Varsho is approaching free agency sooner than people realize. Santander has uncertainty attached to him. The Jays need clarity. Kwon offers that. He's not a stopgap. He's a foundation piece. Some fans will push back, and that's fair. He doesn't hit the ball hard. His peripherals aren't flashy. But the Jays came painfully close to a World Series title without that kind of bat. What they lacked at times was contact, pressure, and consistency. Kwon brings all three. He is the antidote to feast or famine offense. Now let's play with the alignment for a moment, because that's where this becomes even more intriguing. Picture Kwon in left, Varsho in center, and Addison Barger in right. That is an absurdly good defensive outfield. One of the best in baseball, maybe the best. You can rotate DH days. You can rest Springer. You can hide weaknesses. And yes, it's left-handed heavy, but baseball seasons are marathons. Injuries happen. Matchups change. Flexibility wins. Would Cleveland ask for Barger? Probably. Would Toronto want to give him up? That's where the negotiation tightens. Barger feels like a sticking point, and rightly so. But even without him, there are paths to a deal that make sense for both sides. That's what makes this feel real rather than fantasy. And while all this trade talk swirls, the Jays quietly keep adding pieces. Late last night, it was reported that right-hand reliever Nate Garkowicz has received an invite to big league camp. He's not a household name, but he's interesting. 28 years old. 86 strikeouts in just over 53 innings last year. A rough start in High A, followed by dominance in Double A. A 1.22 ERA stretch that forced people to pay attention. This is exactly the type of arm teams like Toronto stash and develop. The bullpen has openings. Beyond the top 4 or 5 names, there's uncertainty everywhere. Who sticks? Who surprises? Who fades? Invites like this aren't random. They're auditions. And then there's the human side of today's news. Buck Martinez will not be returning to the booth in 2026. A voice that has narrated generations of Blue Jays baseball steps away, leaving behind memories, moments, and a standard of excellence. Whoever replaces him has big shoes to fill, and that conversation is just beginning. Around the league, the chessboard keeps moving. Paul Goldschmidt lands with the Yankees on a short deal. Isaac Paredes draws interest from multiple teams. Hazel May is already on the ground in Florida. Pitchers and catchers are almost here. The clock is speeding up. Which brings us back to Stephen Kwon. Because this is the moment when bold teams act. The Jays aren't rebuilding. They aren't retooling. They're trying to win. And this trade, if it happens, will be remembered as one of those moves that didn't scream at the time, but whispered its value over years. So I'll leave you with this. Would you do it? Would you give up depth for certainty? Prospects for production? Let me know in the comments. Would Stephen Kwon be worth the price? If you enjoyed this breakdown, like the video, share it, and subscribe to the Blue Jays Report. Spring training is almost here, and something tells me this story isn't done yet.